Let's talk about something that barely made headlines, but could quietly reshape global trade. While the world is distracted by wars, elections, and cultural chaos, Canada and China just made a move that should make Washington extremely uncomfortable. No press conference with fireworks, no dramatic speech, no viral moment. Just a trade deal. And history tells us something important. Trade deals are never just about trade. They're about power. They're about leverage. They're about who bends and who doesn't. Today, we're breaking down why Canada's renewed trade relationship with China is far more dangerous, strategic, and revealing than it looks, and what it tells us about the future of the Western alliance, the US dollar system, and the slow erosion of American economic dominance. I'm James Smith, and this is a story about quiet realignments in a loud world. Let's start with the basics. Canada and China. After years of trade freezes, retaliatory tariffs, and political hostility, just reached a new tariff arrangement. On the surface, it looks simple. Canada lowers restrictions on certain Chinese electric vehicles. China reduces tariffs on Canadian agricultural exports, especially canola. Both sides claim it's pragmatic and economic. But that's the public version. The real version is this. Canada blinked. China waited. The US wasn't in the room, and that last part matters more than anything else. For years, Canada followed Washington's lead on China. Sanctions, restrictions, moral signaling, supply chain decoupling. But now? Now Canada is quietly saying, we can't afford to make enemies of our second-largest trading partner. And China heard that loud and clear. Here's what most American audiences don't fully grasp. Canada's economy is trapped. Yes, it trades heavily with the United States, but that dependence is a weakness, not a strength. When the US sneezes, Canada catches pneumonia. Interest rates, inflation, currency pressure, housing bubbles. And now, with US protectionism rising from both political parties, Canada is staring at a future where American markets are less open. Supply chains are weaponized. Trade loyalty is conditional. So Canada did what mid-sized powers always do when empires start wobbling. They hedge. China, meanwhile, is very good at hedging others. Beijing doesn't need friendship, it needs access and leverage. By reopening trade doors to Canada, China gains agricultural security, political influence, a wedge inside the Western Bloc. And all it had to do was wait. Let's talk about electric vehicles, because this is where things get serious. China doesn't just make EVs. China dominates EV supply chains. Batteries, rare earths, processing, manufacturing scale. Western governments talk about green transitions, but China already built the infrastructure. Canada lowering barriers to Chinese EVs isn't about cheaper cars. It's about admitting domestic EV production can't compete, accepting dependency on Chinese technology, undermining US efforts to isolate China's auto industry. And Washington knows this. That's why the US has slapped massive tariffs on Chinese EVs. But Canada just quietly signaled, we're not willing to sacrifice our economy to fight your trade war. That's not betrayal. That's survival. Now let's flip the lens. China reducing tariffs on Canadian canola isn't charity. It's precision economics. Chinese leaders understand something Western elites often forget. Farmers vote. Food prices destabilize societies. Agricultural leverage is political leverage. By reopening its market to Canadian farmers, China creates economic relief for rural Canada, political pressure on Ottawa to maintain good relations, a domestic lobby against anti-China policies. This isn't soft power. This is surgical power. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The United States is increasingly asking allies to lose money for ideology, and fewer countries are willing to do that. Sanctions cost, decoupling costs, moral posturing costs. China offers something simpler. Trade with us, and we won't lecture you. That message resonates, especially when inflation is high and voters are angry. Canada's deal with China isn't anti-American. It's post-American. And that's the shift Washington is struggling to accept. This is what multipolarity actually looks like. Not war, not collapse, but quiet adjustments. Countries no longer choose sides. They choose options. China understands this better than anyone. While the U.S. demands alignment, China offers flexibility. And Canada just demonstrated what the future looks like. Strategic ambiguity, economic pragmatism, political realism. The old rules are fading. This deal won't be the last. Expect more quiet trade resets, less ideological consistency, more transactional diplomacy. And expect Washington to react, not with strategy, but with frustration. Because empires don't lose power overnight. They lose it one quiet agreement at a time. So no, this wasn't just a trade deal. It was a signal. A signal that the world is adjusting, slowly, carefully, away from a single center of gravity. Canada saw it. China anticipated it. And the U.S. is still arguing with itself about whether it's happening. I'm James Smith, and if you want more analysis like this, the kind that doesn't scream, but cuts, subscribe, follow, and share this episode. Because the most important shifts in power rarely make the loudest noise. End.